much older and more decayed appearance than those at the height of 500 or 600 feet on the coast of Chile. These shells are associated with much common salt, a little sulphate of lime, both probably left by the evaporation of the spray, as the land slowly rose, together with sulphate of soda and muriate of lime. They rest on fragments of the underlying sandstone, and are covered by a few inches thick of detritus. The shells higher up on this terrace could be traced scaling off in flakes and falling into an impalpable powder; and on an upper terrace, at the height of 170 feet, and likewise at some considerably higher points, I found a layer of saline powder of exactly similar appearance, and lying in the same relative position. I have no doubt that this upper layer originally existed as a bed of shells, like that on the 85 feet ledge; but it does not now contain even a trace of organic structure. The powder has been analysed for me by Mr. T. Reeks. It consists of sulphates and muriates, both of lime and soda, with very little carbonate of lime. It is known that common salt and carbonate of lime, left in a mass for some time together, partly decompose each other; though this does not happen with small quantities in solution. As the half decomposed shells in the lower parts are associated with much common salt, together with some of the saline substances composing the upper saline layer, and as these shells are corroded and decayed in a remarkable manner, I strongly suspect that this double decomposition has here taken place. The resultant salt, however, ought to be carbonate of soda and muriate of lime: the latter is present, but not the carbonate of soda. Hence I am led to imagine that by some unexplained means the carbonate of soda becomes changed into the sulphate. It is obvious that the saline layer could not have been preserved in any country in which abundant rain occasionally fell. On the other hand, this very circumstance, which at first sight appears so highly favourable to the long preservation of exposed shells, has probably been the indirect means, through the common salt not having been washed away, of their decomposition and early decay. I was much interested by finding on the terrace, at the height of 85 feet, embedded amidst the shells and much sea drifted rubbish, some bits of cotton thread, plaited rush, and the head of a stalk of Indian corn. I compared these relics with similar ones taken out of the huacas, or old Peruvian tombs, and found them identical in appearance. On the mainland, in front of San Lorenzo, near Bellavista, there is an extensive and level plain, about 100 feet high, of which the lower part is formed of alternating layers of sand and impure clay, together with some gravel, and the surface, to the depth of from 3 to 6 feet, of a reddish loam, containing a few scattered sea shells and numerous small fragments of coarse red earthenware, more abundant at certain spots than at others. At first I was inclined to believe that this superficial bed, from its wide extent and smoothness, must have been deposited beneath the sea; but I afterwards found in one spot that it lay on an artificial floor of round stones. It seems, therefore, most probable that at a period when the land stood at a lower level, there was a plain very similar to that now surrounding Callao, which, being protected by a shingle beach, is raised but very little above the level of the sea. This plain, with its underlying red clay beds, I imagine that the Indians manufactured their earthen vessels, and that, during some violent earthquake, the sea broke over the beach, and converted the plain into a temporary lake, as happened round Callao in 1713 and 1746. The water would then have deposited mud, containing fragments of pottery from the kilns, more abundant at some spots than at others, and shells from the sea. This bed, with fossil earthenware, stands at about the same height with the shells on the lower terrace of San Lorenzo, in which the cotton thread and other relics were embedded. So we may safely conclude that within the Indo-human period there has been an elevation, as before alluded to, of more than 85 feet, for some little elevation must have been lost by the coast having subsided since the old maps were engraved. At Valparaiso, although in the 220 years before our visit the elevation cannot have exceeded 19 feet, yet subsequently to 1817 there has been a rise, partly insensible and partly by a start during the shock of 1822, of 10 or 11 feet. The antiquity of the Indo-human race here, judging by the 85 feet rise of the land since the relics were embedded, is the more remarkable, as on the coast of Patagonia, when the land stood about the same number of feet lower, the Macrauchenia was a living beast. But as the Patagonian coast is some way distant from the Cordillera, the rising there may have been slower than here. At Bahia Blanca the elevation has been only a few feet since the numerous gigantic quadrupeds were there entombed. and according to the generally received opinion, when these extinct animals were living man did not exist. But the rising of that part of the coast of Patagonia is perhaps no way connected with the Cordillera, but rather with the line of old volcanic rocks in Banda Oriental, so that it may have been infinitely slower than on the shores of Peru. All these speculations, however, must be vague, for who will pretend to say that there may not have been several periods of subsidence, intercalated between the movements of elevation? For we know that along the whole coast of Patagonia there have certainly been many and long pauses in the upward action of the elevatory forces. Chapter 17.